Okay, before we get on to the timestamp, let's have a little introduction to if statements by reconciling the station IDs out of column G. Let's also keep all of these reconciled things just off to the right-hand side of column H. So I'm going to insert next to column I. And so much of this is just about staying organized. Let's begin our function, and we're going to use the same write technique as earlier. So start with equals, if what? Well, if column G contains capital S, lowercase t, lowercase a, well, look at that. STA, STA, STA. There are some instances where it is STA all caps, but it also contains STA with the S capitalized and the 2 lowercase. So looky there, that's a consistent thing that we can search for. And that's a consistent thing we can split this string on. So if search for, in that column, the capital S, lowercase t, lowercase a. All right, that is our logical statement. So if this thing exists, basically is what this is saying. If it exists, it will say true. If it doesn't exist, it'll say false. So what do we want it to do if it says true? Well, I think we want it to perform the same write function as if it, as we did before with time. So let's write that. Okay, now we have it. Write G, that's the column that we're referencing. What are we searching for? We're searching for that capital S in this case, because that's the thing we want to start the split on. We want to start the split on the capital S. We start that on the letter G, and we're subtracting it from the entire length, just as before. Now, I know I said earlier that the if function takes 3 arguments, but if we leave the last one blank, it will simply say false. Or, worst case scenario, if it doesn't find what we're looking for, it'll give us a value error. Let's see how it works. And there we have it. But notice that we are missing the S on the beginning of station. Well, let's +1 on our search statement, shifting the position over by 1. And now we have our S. All right, let's drag this down so we have a few test cases to see what happens. Works. But we have a couple of value errors. Well, that's because STA doesn't exist in this. This is an appropriate timestamp with nothing attached. Okay. So what we can do in this case, since there is no station to be had, what we can do is put another if function around it, and this is a special one called if error. So if there is an error, do a thing. Let's try that. Now, if you look what we have for arguments, if error wants to know what to do first, what is our default value? Well, the default value is going to be this function that we've worked out. But if there is an error, what do we want it to do? Well, I'm going to label it to say unspecified. And there we have it. Now let's copy and paste as before. Copy, move down 1, Command Shift, arrow, and we'll arrow to get to the bottom, paste. And that pops us back up to the top. And what we're going to do now is we're going to label this as stations, then copy the whole thing and paste it in place. Command C, and then paste special, values, and now we have it pasted in place. All right, now we have a dedicated stations column. let's sort out the more complex timestamp. You'll notice we have two scenarios with the timestamp. Scenario 1, the timestamp has the word station with a hyphen, or timestamp is by itself. So we'll have to write two different if statements that control for both of those. Let's get started. I'm going to build these two if statements separately, and then I'll combine them into one so we have one coherent column. Building them out separately will just illustrate that one fills in where the other misses. You'll see. All right, here's our first function. If is blank I2, then G2, else hello world. So if I2 is blank, then give me what's in G2. Otherwise, give me hello world. Pretty straightforward. Watch what happens. Notice what's going on here. We have hello world when the timestamp exists in column I as expected. When blank, we have the value from column G as expected. However, we still have the station attached to it. So we can use our left function to get rid of that. But first we need to know if the word station exists. So I'm just going to make another column. I'm going to insert next to column I just so I can illustrate what is going on here. All right, let's have a look at this function. We have a new function in here called AND. AND takes two arguments. And it wants to know if this thing is true and the other thing is true. And what are we asking? We're asking if the timestamp column, now J, since I inserted one, is blank, and if the word station exists in column H, or G, excuse me, and if the word station exists in column G. We're checking the word station if it exists by searching for it. That should give us a number, and if not, it's false. So we're checking to see if it's false. And if it exists, and if both of those conditions are met, then give me the value in column G. Otherwise, give me false. And sure enough, here we are. Remember, what we're looking for is this column to be blank and for G to not have the word station in it. So here, this satisfies one of those two conditions. It is blank, but the word station exists. Here, it is blank, but the word station does not exist, so we've gotten the value of G. Let's combine both of these with our left function in order to finally reconcile our timestamps. I'll start by deleting the example column I just made and deleting these functions here, and we'll input the new complete function. All right, I know that's a big one, but check the notes in the course and you'll see a complete explanation of what's going on here. Let's go ahead and drag this down and do some copy and pasting as before in order to reconcile this data set completely. So step 1, copy and paste this all the way down. Notice this has not reconciled our date and times yet because this is our timestamp column. So we'll copy the entire column by hitting Command C, selecting this column here, I, the timestamp column, and pasting the values only. There. Now, that removed our header, so we'll just add the header back in. And now we no longer need column H, and we no longer need column G. We'll select them both and delete. Great. Now we have everything separated out. Okay, let's focus for a moment on our dates and times. Remember, these are still functions. Just to be safe, I'm going to put the trim function around both. Note the trim. Now I will copy them individually and paste down as before. And now I'll simply copy and paste all of these values. Copy. Paste special values. Same with time. Copy. Control-Shift down. Paste. Highlight the whole row. Copy again. And paste values. Wow, nice job. You've made it. That was a pretty hairy one. We have one more if function, or one more style of if function. It's called ifs. This one won't be too hard. But first, we're going to do some very easy functions just to separate the dates and the times out into their component parts. And then we'll use ifs to make the day parts: morning, afternoon, evening, and night. It's fairly straightforward and really useful.